Run away! Run away! I'll be right back. Hey there, Gracious Gang. It's Mike from thegraciousguest.org here with you today to talk about retreats. And one retreat in particular that I just returned from a few days ago. So the run away Monty Python reference I started with may not be the most accurate sort of way of looking at it, but in a sense, there is a real willing turning away or turning aside from the direction you're kind of traveling to go on a retreat. Retreats don't just happen. They're the kind of thing that you have to willingly partake in. So I want to share a little bit about the background of retreats, just in a very general sense. And it may be something you know already. It may be new for others, but just something I want to encourage you all, wherever you're coming from, whatever your background is. And I'll do that in just a second. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I invite you, please, as always, to subscribe to this channel. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like the content, share the content far and wide. Go ahead and click that thumb right now, the little thumbs up, not the down one, hopefully. But the thumbs up if you're on YouTube, go ahead and click that. Just takes a second. That actually helps generate the sort of awareness, I guess, of the YouTube algorithm, however that thing works. It's kind of a mystery. But it gets the word out there, shows people, other people that are on YouTube, that this is something that they might want to check out. So that really helps. Also, I want to say up front, I do have a couple of links in the show notes, which I often do if you look below. That's whether you're on YouTube or if you're listening to the audio version of this. Just a couple links that have to do with some things I'm going to mention, so just be aware of those. So just to jump in here, I've been on retreats before in the past. I was on a confirmation retreat, when I was in middle school. I might have been on something before that, I don't remember. Some retreats in college, and bottom line is they can take a lot of different forms. But I do want to share here, I have a couple scripture quotes here. There's a lot more I could go into, but like I said, I want to keep this relatively brief here today. This is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6. Jesus said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a lonely place by themselves." And I think there's something to that right off the bat, a couple things that jump out at me. First of all, this beautiful idea of this invitation from our Lord to, like I said, willingly step aside, take a little exit ramp, sort of something you have to make an effort right from the get-go, even just to go on a retreat. It takes at least low-grade level of commitment, but that's not to be overlooked. I mean, any time that we do anything to tap the brakes, even if it's just during your day, to step aside, to say, okay, hold on, I need 2 minutes of prayer right now, anything we ever do to just slow the momentum, because usually all we do is just roll through life, and it just gets so hectic and stressful. So I want to encourage you right off the bat, even if you can't do what I'm going to share here that I did, or if you're interested in doing something far more rigorous, to the even an extreme level in some extent, where you are on that spectrum, basically, retreat, pulling away, willingly tapping the brakes, there's all kinds of images you could use, is something that just has tremendous benefit, psychological benefit, spiritual benefit. And so I just want to encourage you to consider some of the ideas behind this, if nothing else. So that's important. So it's, our Lord calling us away to a, quote, lonely place, it says in this translation, somewhere that's a little out of the ordinary, whether it's a place in your house that's a little quieter. There's something to be said for trying to maintain prayer all the time, right? As St. Paul says, right? Pray without ceasing. And yes, we're supposed to live our Christian life out. If you're a Christian, you're watching this, everywhere. You're supposed to be an integrated person. I'm supposed to be an integrated person. But sometimes, you have to find a space, a specific physical place very often that will enable you to be more likely able to kind of get some of that recovery and that focus, that quiet that we all need. And so there's just some things to think about. And I love the line there about the disciples, many were coming and going. The idea that there's so many demands, there's so many people who need them that they're not even eating. Like the guys don't even have time to eat. And in my own way, I've been there sometimes, or you get so busy, you miss a meal, or you just have some kind of stress on you where you're helping and you're doing all this stuff, and you just you feel burnt out. Bilbo, right, in Lord of the Rings, says, he describes himself, he says, I feel like butter scraped across too much bread. So this very much is as relevant today as it ever was. And another passage here from Jesus, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, right? Jesus says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So retreats, there's a long, venerable history of something you could call a retreat, some sort of willing commitment to a period of time for recuperation, for mental and spiritual sort of focus, for more dedicated prayer, for preparation. There's something like that in a lot of different religions, religious traditions, cultures all around the world, all throughout human history. So right off the bat, I just want to, again, encourage our viewers and listeners who might be coming from a Christian tradition that's not not the Catholic tradition specifically, or a different religious tradition entirely, or maybe no religious tradition whatsoever. I just want to encourage you, if you're still around, hang on, because this isn't just something for people who are religiously minded, or even if you sort of consider yourself a Christian or a Catholic, or you have you think of it as maybe a cultural identity, or it might just be part of your worldview, but you don't really consider yourself particularly invested or devout. That's fine too. I want to encourage you. This is a human need. This time to, just sort of journey over here a little bit. Step off to the side, go to this lonely place when you're feeling laborious, heavy laden, very stressed out, life that you're living, that you need to kind of figure things out. You need some quiet time. You need some time to sort things out, whatever it might be. There's so many different reasons. There's as many different reasons to go on retreat as there are people to go on retreats. And even in my case, like I had at least, 10, half a dozen to 10 different, very specific reasons that I went on this particular retreat, even just that I was aware of. And then other things came up while I was there. So let me, get to the specifics here a little bit more. There's a very rich and worldwide, very ingrained, sort of Catholic tradition of religious pilgrimage. And again, religious pilgrimage is something that, you see in a lot of different traditions, of course. But in the Catholic tradition, this is something that's been there from the beginning, right? You have the earliest decades and centuries of the Christian thing, the Christian era, where Christians are going on pilgrimage to the holy sites, to the places, the physical places where Jesus lived and died, right? So pilgrimage to the Holy Land became immediately significant. I've been blessed, as I've shared with you before on this program, and I'll probably circle back to it pretty soon, my own experience of going to the Holy Land and other different pilgrimages. So a retreat, I think it's good to look at it, even if you're just going down the street or if it's a one-day thing at your local parish. Try to see it as a pilgrimage. There's all kinds of things you can do to try to, and should do, I think, to get yourself mentally in the state where this is different. This is different time, okay? And so in my case, I went to the Longley Retreat, or Longley Conference Center, Longlea. It's a conference center affiliated with Opus Dei, which is a Catholic spirituality, you could say, if you're not familiar with it. There's a lot of negative nonsense out there about it. An Opus Dei priest was the bad guy in the Da Vinci Code, which is just a joke, really. But Opus Dei is it's an expression of Catholic life, Catholic piety, that really began in 1928 officially, founded by now Saint Jose Maria Escriva, who was a Spanish priest, and has tremendously beautiful writings. In fact, I've got this here. I'll put a link to this as well from Scepter Publications. This is a great little summary of a couple of his texts, and it's just little quotes and selections from different letters he wrote, that are just tremendously spiritually powerful. But anyway, Uh, Opus Dei, like other religious, either orders or prelatures or whatever they might be in the church, will host retreats or has different sort of forms of this. And I found out about this particular one through my wife, who heard about it through some friends of ours a couple years ago. She's been there twice now, and I was really blessed to go this past weekend. And so for us, basically the way this particular one is set up, they have the schedule all together. It wasn't a self-guided one, which you can do that. There's different ways to do that. I don't usually recommend that for people who are going on like their first retreat, because if we're humble, we'll say, what do we know, right, about formulating a retreat? I mean, the whole idea and my sort of experience of it is to be able to be drawn out of self. I don't usually need the devil himself to trick me into all sorts of messed up, awful, confused, and less than holy stuff and behaviors. I'm usually pretty darn good at that myself, and just my fallen nature. So I think, really good it's an act of humility, I think, if it's done right, to sort of submit to a particular arrangement, particular schedule. I went on one, this particular one, where there were about 25 other men. It was a men's retreat. It's close to Luray Caverns, in Virginia, Port Royal, Culpeper. It's kind of in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Really beautiful rolling terrain in sort of central Western Virginia. Not West Virginia, but Western Virginia. Pretty close to West Virginia. In fact, you go through parts of West Virginia on your way home to Pennsylvania if you live where I do. So beautiful landscape, tremendously breathtaking, just natural beauty. So the atmosphere was really conducive to a peaceful, quiet kind of countryside, prayerful experience. And so I checked in Thursday night. We had a talk late at night that the priest who was helping to run the retreat gave in the chapel, and just to kind of set the tone a little bit. And then, you go to sleep. And for this retreat, we didn't wake up super early. I tend to, just because that's my lot in life. But, you get up. Some people roomed together. Most people had private rooms. And, you get up, you get ready. And then you would gather for some kind of liturgy, or opening prayer, some kind of meditation. It could change a little bit each day. But basically, we had periodic 20 to 30 minute meditative, prayer reflections that the priest would give. We had mass each day, opportunities for confession, and then we also had these gatherings where we would all gather together in this big living room area. And the layman, Daryl, who was really kind of running the retreat in a lot of ways, he's sort of the main guy that kind of coordinated it. He would lead, or someone else that he would designate, that was prepared for it, would lead kind of a conference, just and thinking about life. And in our case, we were thinking a lot about, what does it mean to be a good Christian man? How can I find good examples to follow? Find a good some saints that particularly speak to me for whatever reason. What are our, and how do we go about trying to identify what our kind of primary sin tendencies might be? Our predominant defect, if you will. And that's not popular language today, but that's just shows how desperately we need to talk about that today. Every one of us, every one of you, me, we're all broken. That's not a browbeating, low view of humanity. It's a real view of humanity. And so there was a real encouragement to very peacefully, prayerfully reflect upon our lives, And not only think about yourself the whole time. It's not a selfishness, camp. Basically, far from it. Be real with yourself, be real with God. You're here right now in this time that you've agreed to set aside to focus on being a better person, right? Allowing the mercy of God in, allowing the light of God in, trying to still yourself. I have this quote right up here: "Be still and know that I am God," from Psalm 46, verse 10. I'm very often myself like agitated water. If you go out on a pond or even out to the shore, wherever, if you're over water in a boat and the water's murky, there's been a storm, there's waves or whatever, and it's kind of churning up all that sand and grit and all that stuff, and you can't see into the water very far. You put your hand in the water, you can't even see your fingertips. versus if you're on water that's very still, very clear, it's not polluted. You can see way far down, farther than you think you should be able to. Like looking in a muddy pond versus looking in a swimming pool that nobody's jumped in yet. So that kind of imagery I was thinking about a lot, and how my own life, there's so much agitation, there's so much suffering and grief and stress and anxiety and all these things that just I can't see. I can't see the effect, adequately enough. I can't see the effect that my patterns of behavior are having on my wife, my daughters, my students, my family, myself. And so I think that alone is worth the price of admission, so to speak, is to set aside this time to go and just be still. And it's hard. You will want to whip the phone out. I left my phone in my room most days and didn't turn it on except to like call my wife and my girls at night. But then by the end of it, I got a little lax, and there were a few more times a day I'd have it with me. My biggest regret, to be honest with you, from it. So next time I go, I'm definitely gonna have a harder rule about nope, the phone's gonna stay in the van or like just in my room. It will never leave my room until I take it out to go out and call outside, so I'm not disturbing people in the building. Because another thing is, this was a silent retreat, which it's not like if you're falling down a hill you can't yell for help, and you can talk to other people, but it encouraged a real atmosphere of quiet. You'd sit together in common for meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and nobody would talk. You walk in, we had our own little napkins, cloth napkins they gave us, just like normal restaurant cloth napkins, but they had a little cubby off to the side with numbers on it, so you just put your napkin in there. So that was just kind of fun. So you go in and get your napkin, and you sit. It's like a buffet style thing where we were at, and so you get food, and you sit down, and Daryl, the retreat coordinator, goes over and pushes a little play button on this speaker off to the side, and had an audio book going, and it could be a spiritual book. Ours was a autobiography of one of Saint Jose Maria Escriva's early collaborators, one of his friends. I guess he was sort of a student, one of his mentors as well, mentees, I guess. One of his. I hesitate to say disciples, but yeah, one of the students who Jose Maria had worked with at first wrote this book, and I'll put the link for that below as well. And the book is called "Dream and Your Dreams Will Fall Short," but it's a very interesting book that covers some of the background of the whole movement and the Spanish Civil War and all this kind of stuff. But he would just play that, and you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm a very chatty person, but it's wonderful. You sit there and you're with other people. It's a little weird at first, but like you're just sitting and like got your cup of coffee, your tea, you kick back at the end. I had a cookie and I'm like listening to this audiobook. And then Daryl just goes up and shuts it off after we've been there for about a half hour, says a little prayer, and we all go to the next thing. And the next thing might be you being able to walk around anywhere you want, the woods, the trails, just go sit on the deck and read something, pray the rosary, whatever it might be, take a nap if you need to. It was just delightful. And it was like that for all day Friday, all day Saturday, and then we were done around lunch on Sunday. So I keep saying the word encourage. Like I said, I'm going to put the links below for the specific retreat center, Longley, that I went to. I really encourage you, if you're anywhere remotely within the realm of Virginia, to check that place out. It's well worth it. They have retreats for men and women. They have them all year round. They kind of alternate. They have the men's retreats and the women's retreats. And it's like I said, just a tremendous experience. Really great opportunity for you to pull off the road a little bit for some very much needed restoration, leisure, rejuvenation, prayer and contemplation, and fellowship. Because for us, at the end, we actually had sort of a send-off party the last night. Had some, for us, they brought out sodas and snacks, beer, they had some whiskey and wine, cigars. It was pretty awesome. And it was 4th of July weekend, so you could hear some fireworks going in the distance and stuff. And so a lot of us got to catch up and talk and get to know each other on the last night and kind of link up, and make some friendships and contacts and real, experience of Christian brotherhood, and having shared this retreat together and then unpacking it together at the end. So bottom line, I just wanted to share my experience with you guys today. I want to encourage you to find some kind of retreat. Like I said, you can do a weekend like that. There are longer ones you can do that are far more involved, and potentially more revealing of where you're at in life and helpful. There are shorter ones as well. You know, you can do self-guided ones if you think you're up for that, or you can manage that. It can be very difficult. If you're tremendously self-disciplined, that might be something you could do. So just thought I'd share some thoughts with you guys. I'm going to come back to the topic of retreats again in the not too distant future. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for other great interviews and such coming up here pretty soon in the next couple of weeks and months. I've got a couple neat things lined up. I'm excited rather to share with all of you. And thanks for tuning into the Gracious Guest Show today. I'm Mike Creavey, and until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.